Hey guys, it's the Blade 5, and normally I don't like to make videos on controversial topics because I feel it's kind of a way of just getting views, regardless of if it's that person's intention or not. But I decided to make an exception for this because I think that if more people talk about this, then maybe Arc Systems will listen and change their stance on this. I think it's next to impossible for this to work, but the more people that express this increases the chances slightly. Plus, I did talk about Blazblue Cross-Tag Battle under a month ago, so I do have an interest in what's going on. So not too long ago, there was a new trailer for Cross-Tag Battle which revealed Blake from RWBY as a new character. But she's DLC. With the even more shocking reveal that all the characters revealed previously is the entire base roster with an extra 20 DLC characters, including Blake, on top of that. Meaning that half of the roster is DLC. Like with most people, I think this is very stupid. We've had vanilla Street Fighter V basically being an unfinished game upon release, and we've had Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite practically requiring DLC to make its roster good. But I think both of those cases are more present here, since not only are we basically getting half of a game, but when looking at the base roster, it's clear that there are some major characters omitted from each series who are likely going to end up as DLC because I guess Arc Systems thinks
we've got to have money.
Blake is already the most obvious case of this, as even coming from someone who has never watched RWBY, I know that Blake is part of the main cast of characters, and even makes up part of the show's title. And since Blake is DLC, that probably means Yang will be as well, so half of the main group is DLC, and I can totally understand RWBY fans being annoyed by that. When it comes to other series, for Blazblue, I can easily picture characters like Hakumen, Taokaka, and Lychee being DLC. For Persona 4 Arena, the rest of the investigation team, and the only thing I knew about Under Night in Birth before this game was the character Orie, so I guess she might be popular. All major and fan favorite characters from those series who we're probably going to have to pay for. And like what everybody and their grandma who have made videos on this subject have also said, with the exception of the RWBY characters, all these characters are using already existing assets from their respective series. Granted, some of them have to be redrawn to better fit the Blazblue art style and they need tweaking with things like hitboxes, but I would imagine that wouldn't take as much time as creating a completely new character from scratch. Plus, in Blake's reveal trailer, they straight up show some gameplay of her, meaning that she's at least mostly finished and that all that's left is some minor adjustments before she's added. So with the game coming out at the end of May in Japan, I don't see why Arc Systems couldn't just add her to the base roster before release. The same thing goes for the Blazblue, Persona, and Under Night characters that have been locked behind this paywall, since they take even less time to add. Meaning that if Arc Systems have to release the game on the date given and can't delay it, I fail to see why they can't just add a couple more characters in so we can at least have the majority of the roster at launch. I'm fine with DLC, in fact I was expecting it for this game, but cutting the roster in half to sell the others later is honestly the worst DLC practice I've ever seen. There are people who are choosing not to support this game, and I completely understand their reasoning, but I'm actually somewhat playing devil's advocate with myself since despite the fact that I do agree this is a dumb business practice, I'm still keeping an open mind about it. This is because we still don't know the full extent of how this DLC is going to be handled. It's possible that they could sell the game for a cheaper price to balance out the fact that you have to pay for half the roster. Some videos talking about the subject say that the game will cost around the same as a fully priced game in yen. I don't know where this information came from though, but even then it's possible they could change this for the worldwide release. Second is that they could release the DLC characters at a fairly cheap price for DLC standards, especially when adding the characters that are just reused assets, to make up for the fact that there's going to be so many of them. I would have preferred if they just released them for free like what Overwatch does with its additional characters, but seeing as how they're in packs, I doubt that. Although part of me thinking this is just me wanting to cling on to some hope, since I still want to play this game because I've always wanted to play a Blazblue game, but I don't want to buy it if they're releasing it at full price, as I don't want to support this business practice because it will just encourage them and other developers to do the same thing. But if none of the possibilities I mentioned happen, then I'll either do the same thing I'm doing with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite and wait for a price drop to offset me having to spend so much on DLC, or waiting for an updated version that has all the DLC characters included from the start, since every fighting game does that, and I hear that Blazblue is no exception. So while I do think that this whole DLC situation is a really dumb move and kind of a ripoff depending on what happens with pricing, I'm still keeping an open and more optimistic mind about it, and I recommend that anyone else who's conflicted about Cross-Tag Battle to do the same.